Have you ever looked back on a moment in your marriage or motherhood and thought, I wish I'd said yes. I wish I hadn't let fear stop me? Sometimes the smallest no, especially for family, becomes the biggest regret later. If you've ever held back out of fear, comfort, or habit, this episode is going to speak straight to your heart. Today I'm going to talk about how the television series, The Madison, reminded me how we should love our husbands and our families with courage instead of fear, and why saying yes, even when it stretches us, might be one of the most Christ-like acts of love we ever offer. Before we start, though, this is your spoiler alert. If you want to watch the show first, pause here. But if you're ready to hear the lesson every wife needs to take to heart, keep listening. Welcome to Building Strong Homes, the podcast where faith meets family in the most practical and powerful ways. I'm your host, Carol Roper, wife, mom, and former home designer who used to spend my days drafting floor plans and designing details, but now I help wives and moms design lives based on God's Word. This podcast is for women who want more than just survival mode. You want clarity, you want purpose, you want a home that stands strong, not just physically, but spiritually. If you've ever wondered how your ordinary days could build something extraordinary, you're in the right place. Discover biblical blueprints for shaping a legacy that reflects God's design, one brick of faith at a time. Now, let's talk about a lesson I'm still learning. Recently, my husband John and I watched Taylor Sheridan's newest series, The Madison. If you're not familiar with Taylor Sheridan, he's the writer who brought us the series Yellowstone, 1923, 1883, and Marshall, among many others. I'm not endorsing these shows because some of them are very violent and inappropriate and not family friendly. But when I started watching The Madison, I had to make sure it was written by this same person. It was a deeply poignant show about suffering and grief that quickly drew me in. Although this family isn't Christian, because that point is addressed in the show, and I know the story would play differently in some ways, the underlying theme still applies either way. Before I go any further, I want to remind you that I'll be talking about the premise of the whole series, so this is your spoiler alert. If you want to watch the show before you listen, stop here. You'll find out what the show is based on in around the first 30 minutes of episode 1 and can come back and listen then. The story is set in both New York City and somewhere in Montana. It's about a wealthy family who lives in Manhattan. Michelle Pfeiffer plays the wife, Stacy, and Kurt Russell plays the husband, Preston. Preston has a deep love for fly fishing in the Madison River in Montana and goes as often as he can with his brother, Paul. But Stacy, who refers to herself as a city mouse, refuses her husband's numerous requests to visit his favorite place, saying she'll come when a proper toilet is installed in the house. And to be honest, I don't blame her. Outhouses are not on this girl's list of places to visit either. Preston and Stacy have two beautiful daughters, one son-in-law, and two granddaughters who all live close by in New York City. This seems to be a close family, although slightly dysfunctional. While Preston is away in his beloved Montana, Stacy, dining in a swanky restaurant, receives a phone call from law enforcement telling her that her husband has been killed. Let me stop right here and say, Michelle Pfeiffer performs one of the most compelling scenes I've ever watched, a gut-wrenching display of shock and grief that will bring you to tears. On the phone, the officer requests Stacy come to Montana to identify the body. In unimaginable grief, the whole family flies out immediately, and once they reach the coroner's office, Michelle again draws us into the scene with a heartbreaking performance, showing the pain of losing a loved one so tragically. After a night in a hotel where the entire family ends up in the same room together, grieving the loss of their husband and father, they head to Preston's cabins, nestled next to the Madison River. That's where the story gets even deeper and the grief of regret plays out in Stacy's heart. She sees for the first time why her husband loved this place so much. He'd even built two small cabins, hoping one day his wife would relent and bring the girls with her to visit. Seeing the children's games in one cabin, realization hits Stacy hard when she understands that he'd been preparing for them for decades, wanting so much to share its wonder and beauty with them all. And now he wasn't even there to witness it. I would say the theme of this entire show is regret. I've watched all 6 episodes and can't get that theme out of my head. It makes you wish Stacy could go back and change the answer to Preston's frequent question, to happily pack up the girls when they were young and make this a favorite place for all of them, where they have shared experiences together, to shape their girls' character from soft and spoiled to strong and capable. We witness how that bad character has now been passed down to the granddaughters as well. But now Stacy won't allow it to go on any longer if she can help it. She presses her children and grandchildren to look at life differently, not as selfish and deserving, but instead from a grateful and humble point of view. Just to let you know, she's got a long way to go with our girls, but at least she's trying to make a difference and right the wrongs she and her husband instilled in their children. As I watched each episode, I was reminded of when I was a young wife and mom and didn't want to do or let John do some of the things he wanted. Don't get me wrong, he pretty much did what he wanted, except for a few things I firmly protested against. He'd always dreamed of learning to fly, but I flatly refused to let him do it. Fear had a grip on me. I did not want something to happen to him. But then I read Lisa TerKeurst's book, Capture His Heart, Becoming the Godly Wife Your Husband Desires. In it, she shares how husbands need our support and encouragement to do things that might be a little dangerous, how most men seek adventure to help affirm their manhood. And so, for John's next birthday, I gave him flying lessons. Not enough to get his pilot license, but enough for him to see if he really wanted to do it. He loved it and bought enough lessons to finish the training. But on the last day, when he was supposed to go up on his own for the first time, he didn't do it. He couldn't take a chance of something happening to him and leaving us behind. I didn't have to be so afraid after all. John knew his limits. Years later, I wanted to get John a special gift for Christmas and remembered all the times he said he wanted to go to Alaska. Since I'd never had a desire to go to a remote location so far away, I always dismissed the idea when he'd mention it. But when I thought about how much the flying lessons meant to him, I decided it was time for us to vacation to John's dream destination. So on Christmas morning, I handed him a card saying I wanted us to go to Alaska and even enclosed the cash I'd saved to pay for the plane tickets. He was stunned and excited. It was an incredible trip. Overwhelmed by the beauty that surrounded us, our mouths were hanging open for the first couple of days as we tried to take it all in. I had no idea of the beauty that awaited us there. What a gift for me as well as my husband. It's funny how we can have a certain perspective about how things will go and ignore the other person's anticipated dream. We look at the negative and it seems they can only see the positive, or vice versa. But when we put those expectations aside, we usually enjoy a pretty good experience. With the exceptions of having to actually use an outhouse in Alaska and a very uncomfortable ride on the back of a four-wheeler over an Alaskan hillside, the trip was incredible, one I'm so grateful to have experienced. I don't know about you, but I don't want to get to the end of my life and wish I'd done the things my husband longed for me to do with him. I already have enough regrets as it is, things I've said or didn't say to loved ones who have passed on. Sometimes the regret is overwhelming, and I wish so badly I could go back and make things right. But the hard fact is I can't, and neither can you. So we must live for today. Last summer, John reciprocated on the Alaska trip by taking me to England. It's been a lifelong dream of mine John didn't share. But because it meant so much to me, he knew it would be a great trip, and it was spectacular. When he saw tears in my eyes as we landed in London, he understood the importance of my dream, and he has no regrets. He even had a great time. I know the Madison is a fictional story of loss and regret, but I wonder if Taylor Sheridan wrote this series from his perspective, someone who has experienced deep loss and regret. Because it rings so true, it would seem so. Maybe your spouse doesn't have a big ask like a dream trip. It could be he'd like you to go for a walk occasionally, and you always say you're too busy or tired. Or maybe he's asked you to attend work events with him, but you feel uncomfortable around his fellow employees. Or he'd like you to spend more time with his family, but you'd rather spend time with yours. I'm not saying it will be easy, but it will be worth it. Be honored that your spouse wants to include you. We show selfless love to others by saying yes, especially when it's hard or something we just don't want to do. You might be surprised by how much you enjoy it. I also need to add that the request doesn't have to come from a spouse. It may be a child or parent asking you to step out of your comfort zone, deviate from your schedule, or prioritize their dream. Pray about it and see what God shows you. Maybe listening to this podcast is your answer. Say yes, even if it does include using an outhouse. I'm sure Stacy wishes she hadn't let that stop her from enjoying the trip of a lifetime with her husband. It could have changed their family dynamic for good, if only she hadn't realized it too late. If this episode stirred something in you, a nudge, a memory, a longing, don't ignore it. Regret is a heavy teacher, but it's also a gracious one. You and I can't go back and rewrite the moments we wish we'd handled differently, but we can choose differently today. What if your yes becomes a memory you both cherish for the rest of your life? What if it becomes the moment God uses to strengthen your marriage, deepen your connection, or heal something you didn't even know needed healing? If this episode encouraged you, would you consider sharing it with a friend and leaving a review? These are the ways you can make sure others hear these stories of faith, and it's also a way that you can say thank you for the podcast. That would mean so much. And before we go, I want to let you know I'm going to be releasing episodes every 2 weeks for a while because I'm working on something really fun and special. I'll be sharing about it soon. And I would love your prayers as I seek to do God's will to encourage and build up those who want a little more hands-on help to build their own strong homes. So I'll see you in 2 weeks with another new guest episode with Tiffany Milliander. Until next time, keep showing up and loving bravely. Remember, don't give up, especially when it comes to doing hard things for the ones you love. Don't give in and keep building strong. You're making memories that matter. Thanks so much for listening.